Good evening, Robert Scribbler. It is September 11th, 2018. Thank you for joining me for another climate change and clean energy video blog. Now, for this segment, I am going to talk more about the tropical Atlantic, which is just about as active as I have ever seen it. And I'm sure if you talk to meteorologists or tropical experts, they would probably say something similar. We've got an area of disturbed weather moving into the Gulf of Mexico, which, according to the National Hurricane Center, has a moderate chance of developing into a tropical cyclone. We've got another area of disturbed weather in the North Atlantic, which is also showing signs of developing tropical characteristics. It's a rather high latitude region, only has a slight chance of development, but it's a pretty odd region to see tropical cyclone development. We have seen, however, tropical cyclones developing in and around this region during 2018, and in large part due to very warm sea surface temperatures that we have seen, much warmer than normal sea surface temperatures, particularly in a section near the U.S. East Coast, particularly the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast Coast, and extending out into the Central Atlantic. We have Helena, which is moving off to the north. It's a hurricane. And we have Isaac, which is a tropical storm heading off to the west, showing quite a bit of convection, but a rather disorganized circulation. But the main event for the tropics at this time is Hurricane Florence, which is now bearing down on the U.S. East Coast. I'm going to talk about some of the conditions that are lending strength to Florence, particularly those warmer than normal sea surfaces. Just going to check the time here. But before I do that, I'd just like to let you guys know that I am no longer on the northeast coast of South Carolina near Murrells Inlet. Today we move north back to back to Washington, D.C. I've got relatives in Virginia Beach as well, and a couple of relatives who live on the Outer Banks who have also evacuated. So as of this time, we have all evacuated. We were under mandatory evacuation orders in Murrells Inlet, according to orders issued by the governor of South Carolina. Now, it's worth noting that Florence is projected to make landfall in North Carolina, and the worst effects are likely to be where Florence makes landfall and to the north of the center of landfall. Although, looking at some of the storm surge models, it appears that Murrells Inlet is expected to see a 4 to 6, maybe a 7-foot storm surge, due to the fact that Florence is pushing just a phenomenal amount of water. And I'm going to talk a bit about that later. So looking at sea surface temperatures, I'm going to go ahead and just flip over to sea surface temperatures. I'm going to also talk about anomalies, but sea surface temperatures in the path of Florence right now, Florence is about here in this zone, so to the south and east of the little green dot that I've placed as a reference point on the map for you guys. And as you can see, sea surface temperatures in the path of Florence are nearly 30 degrees Celsius or 85.8 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very warm, capable of sustaining the strongest tropical cyclones, Category 5 tropical cyclones. And it's worth noting that the National Hurricane Center projected intensity forecast does have Florence strengthening to near Category 5 status, although there are some slight atmospheric limiters, very slight atmospheric limiters. There's very little wind shear, although Florence itself does seem to be spitting out some drier air that it ingested a while ago. It's notable that a slot in the southwestern segment of the eye wall has tended to try and dry out with the cloud tops falling a bit. But this drier slot, this weaker slot, has not at all impacted the forecast, which looks very impressive, showing a very impressive symmetry with cloud tops in the range of negative 75 to negative 80 degrees Celsius, which are very, very cold cloud tops and indicative of a very powerful storm, especially with this closed eye wall structure. Florence is moving off to the northwest at about 17 miles per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center. Contains maximum sustained winds of 140 miles an hour at present, so a strong Category 4 storm with a 945 millibar minimum central pressure. Again, the National Hurricane Center and many models are showing that Florence will strengthen over the next 24 to 36 hours, although as Florence gets close to the coast, it may encounter some wind shear and some other adverse conditions which may tamp down the storm just prior to landfall, although present predictions expect Florence to impact the North Carolina coast along its present track, somewhere near Morehead City, or somewhere near Morehead City, and any region along the coast is expected to see Category 4 type effects at the point of landfall and just to the north. So a very dangerous system, a very strong system with very few atmospheric limiters tamping it down at this time. So we're about 2 days out from first effects of the storm. So everyone should be completing evacuation and preparedness at this time. When you start to see first effects, it is not the time to be trying to evacuate. You might end up facing cut off roads, cut off access to routes of safe travel. So now is the time to leave for any interest still along the coast and in the path of this very dangerous storm that may be the worst storm to strike the U.S. East Coast in 30 years or more, depending on Florence's intensity at landfall. Certainly something comparable to Hugo at this time, and probably stronger than Fran, which was a pretty strong strike to North Carolina. Now, I've talked a bit in this segment. I want to talk more about impacts, in particular flood impacts, and as it relates to both rainfall and storm surge flooding. And it's worth noting that some of the flooding impacts for this storm could nearly be comparable to Hurricane Harvey, which struck Texas last year. But before I segue into a new video blog, I'd just like to say that the overall Earth system, due to human-caused climate change, has been primed for an increasing potential for peak intensity for storms like hurricanes. And anyone who's watched the tropics over the past few years has noted that we have seen a very severe spate of impacts, and these impacts have been fueled by a number of factors related to human-caused climate change, such as warming sea surface temperatures, which provide fuel for storms, as well as increasing atmospheric moisture levels, which increase the peak potential of the most extreme rainfall events. And we've certainly seen very extreme rainfall events over recent years as global temperatures have risen to a range of 1 to 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial averages, which many climate scientists have identified as a dangerous range, not a catastrophic range, but a dangerous range. That said, such factors as warming sea surface temperatures and rising global atmospheric moisture levels do fuel the potential for more catastrophic storms. And we are seeing a storm that has likely been influenced by those effects approaching the East Coast at this time. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be chatting with you in a few minutes about other impacts from Florence.